When I met Patty at In the Pink Luncheon in the Woodlands, I thought she was just this beautiful lady in a beautiful pink dress. I had no idea what her testimony would be regarding the love of her life, her husband. You've got to hear her story and how God got her through it. She's my guest on my Dana Tyson podcast. And thank you, Mattress Mac from Gallery Furniture, for always sponsoring us. Now, Patty, I heard your story at In the Pink Luncheon. I've been telling everyone about this luncheon. It was so much fun out in the Woodlands, the location for the #1 outdoor venue in the world. Did you hear about that? The Woodlands
I
Pavilion,
did. I did
right?
hear about that. Yeah.
So, just an amazing group of ladies, and I was honored to be able to MC it, and it was to help out with breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And you were one of the beautiful sponsors of it who came up and spoke. And I just thought you'd say, thank you for letting me be here. Your dress was amazing. And then you go in and you tell your story. Patty, I was floored. I was absolutely floored. And I really wanted you to share your story with our viewers because, I mean, first of all, and I know that's what got you through, but tell us what happened when you were a young mom.
Oh, when I was a young mom. Well, my husband, it started out, we thought he was sick. And it was at Christmas time, which Christmas time's crazy anyways.
Right, right.
And we assume he's having migraines or something, but after like day 3 of not being able to keep medicine down, anything, we decide, I call his mom, who's a nurse. What do we do? She's like, go to the emergency room. And I'm like, okay. And I just thought it was for him to get IVs, get hydrated, be able to
Right,
control the
right.
pain. And we go and they give him medicine and he's doing good, send us back home. Well, once the medicine wears off, it's coming back. And so I call her and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, what do I do? The pain's coming back. And my husband wasn't one to complain about pain. So she's like, I don't think you have to pay another copay if you go back the same day. Literally, that's why we decided to go back. We're like,
Right,
oh,
right.
good. We don't have to pay another copay. So we go back and they cannot. It was like Friday night. And I remember my son had his very first Cub Scout camp out that night. And my husband couldn't go. And so we have 5 children at the time. My oldest son was 11. My next son was 9. My daughter was going to be turning 7 the following week. And then I had twins. At that time, they would have been about 14 months old. So twin boys. So finding sitters isn't that easy. We go back, they can't figure out what's wrong. And they're like, we don't know what's wrong. We don't know what's wrong. And they're like, and they're running tests. And finally it's about 1 a.m. And they're like, we're going to just admit him because we can't figure out what's wrong.
Mhm.
And they admit him. And it was just, they thought it was a mic. They just didn't understand. Had severe pain in his head and he couldn't keep anything down. He kept throwing
Right.
up. And they could only keep it under control if they had him there. Come Sunday, they still don't know what's wrong. So this is from Friday night to Sunday.
Right.
Saturday was my daughter's, actually, yeah. So Saturday wasn't a weekday. Saturday was her 7th birthday. Luckily had great friends that were like,
Yep.
we will throw the party. Don't worry. You be with your husband. And we lived outside of Portland at the time, Oregon. And we lived away from our family. The majority of our family either lived up in Seattle or my husband's family lived in the state of Utah. And so my friends were just amazing. We'll do the birthday party. So I come in, I'd been at the hospital, and all I literally had at the time when I spent the night Friday night was my phone. That
Yeah.
was it. And
Yep.
this is 2007. So it's not like your smartphone today. So I come in the middle of my daughter's party. I give her a kiss. Hey, I got it. And she was great. Everybody was great.
Right.
I grab laptop, go back to the hospital, and by Sunday afternoon, they were like, still have no answers. And I'm like, I cannot depend on my friends. So I call my mother-in-law, who's a nurse, and I said, can you get here as soon as possible?
Yep. Yep.
And luckily, she got on a flight, got there Sunday night, so I could go back home and be with my kids. So I schedule with my friends like Monday what we're going to do. Here's all our schedule. once the twins go down for a nap, my best friend was going to come be with them so I can go back to the hospital.
Yep.
And she shows up early at my door Monday morning. And I'm like, "Hi." She's like, "They have an answer. You need to get to the hospital. Like, they have an answer."
Now, this was your mother-in-law.
No, it was my best friend. My
Oh,
mother-in-law's at the hospital.
okay.
My best
Okay.
friend who's gonna babysit the twins, and she wasn't due for, like, another hour, so she was
Right.
early.
Okay.
And so I run to the hospital, and again, this is a hospital I had spent the whole weekend in, and he'd had these headaches and the lights were off. I run up the back stairs, I go in and I open the door, and the lights are on. And so I'm like excited, right? Because I
Right.
see the lights are on and he's sitting up in bed. And I'm like, oh, he had been sleeping all weekend. The lights were off. And then our eyes met. And that moment our eyes met, I knew something was wrong. He just looked in my eyes and it was like, I am so sorry. And I just was like, and like literally, I felt like I was gonna just pass it. Like I just felt like I was going to pass out. I just the second our eyes met, and my mother-in-law comes around, runs and grabs me, and she whispers in my ears. She goes, "You be strong
Mm.
for him."
Yep.
And I walk over and I hug him, and he just starts sobbing and just, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And that's when we had found out he had stage 4 cancer. And so,
Unbelievable.
yeah, and so, like, all of a sudden, here we are, December 17th, and we thought it was the flu. I mean, we had
Right.
we had no idea, we were going on with our lives, and, so that was Monday. And Tuesday, he'd always played indoor soccer on Tuesdays nights, he was on a team, and, the Tuesday before, he had played in a game, he had scored 2 goals, and then here he was the next Tuesday in the hospital, and all his team came after their game, and we're like, "Okay, we have stage 4 cancer. What are we gonna do?"
Right.
We look at our family, it's Christmas time. "Okay, let's go. Let's, you be strong." So, that's how it started.
And and he did not, I mean, this was not a very long experience dealing with
No,
this, right?
no, I mean, you kinda go by January 4th. So you go from December, and I know the dates again because my daughter's birthday really puts, her birthday's December 15th. So by January 4th, um, he couldn't walk. And we're like, okay, you literally, you were scoring game and he couldn't walk. And what it was he had cancer cells in his spinal fluid. And it was actually putting pressure so that I guess you have little vents. So the spinal fluid goes up to your brain and it comes out. Anyways, that's what was giving him the headache. The cancer cells were clogging these vents you have around. And then it was putting pressure on his spinal cord. So that's why all of a sudden, by January 4th, we're dealing with a wheelchair. So I'm
Mm.
like, okay, okay, now I'm dealing with a wheelchair. I can do this. And so then we had to go into like rehab. I had to learn how to do a wheelchair up and down stairs, how to do, you don't think of, until you have someone with a wheelchair, you don't think about all the things like learning how to help them transfer, from the wheelchair to a bed, to to a toilet, to the car, how to
Right.
handle the wheelchair. And at this point, I'm still just like, okay, we're fighting this, we're doing this. Um,
Was he getting treatment or were they just
yeah,
kind of
it was so the thing about cancer is no cancer, they had to find out first what type of cancer to then do the treatment.
like,
If and so like all of a sudden we're dealing with him being in a wheelchair, but then it was like, oh, we need to find out what kind of cancer. And so we had found out that it was melanoma, which he had, 9 years prior, and that's important, or like 9.5 years prior, he had had a mole removed on his back. And they're like, we don't like, if you've ever had a mole removed, you know how they'll go in and they're like, we want to do bigger area, make sure we
right,
get all the
right.
cancer out. And then they even went and took his lymph nodes out. They're like, we're making sure we're getting all of this. So 9.5 years before that had happened. And so it never occurred to us that it would come back,
Wow.
9.5 years later.
Right,
Because
right.
we did you go for 3 months and do all the checkups, and then you go every 6 months, and then you go. And at 9 years, they declared him cancer free. So when he first gotten that mole removed, our oldest was, he was just a baby, and I was pregnant with our second one. And we were young, fresh out of college, starting our family, and we could never get life insurance. And that's why, again, I know these dates. You think about it.
Wow.
No, he has this. At 9 years, they declared him cancer free. And this is where you see God's hand in the whole thing. I mean, this is where you literally. So at 9 years, we did all the tests you needed to do, and we're able to get life insurance at 9 years.
Unbelievable.
So this is 9.5 years. We got the policy April 2007. This is
Patty.
we're now January 2008. I mean, it's just, you see God's hand in just, in providing.
Right.
But I wasn't even thinking about that. So once they were doing treatment, but we were dealing with, he's now in a wheelchair. So you're figuring out that, but then you're also doing radiation, doing treatment, um, and doing an aggressive treatment, on top of that. And so we're going through the treatment. And one thing, again, and you'd mentioned I was young. I mean, I was 32. I knew nothing about cancer. And this is one thing that I don't know if uh, in the scriptures they talk about your eyes being holden so God can teach you where you don't understand. So I don't know if I didn't understand because God didn't need me to understand at that moment or not. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
But I didn't understand. They kept saying, you got to think about his quality of life. And I didn't understand that phrase. My only
Mhm.
thought was, we will do whatever we need to do. We will fight as hard. We will do the maximum amount that we need to do to get him better.
Yep.
And they would go, Patty, you need to think about his quality of life because radiation, they take you to near death. I mean, you think about it, they're putting radiation in your body. So
Yep.
we
Yep.
fought it as aggressively as we could. And he graduated radiation, and he's at home. Again, these great friends and neighbors, my community, they made our home wheelchair ready. So suddenly, again, this is January. I now have a wheelchair ramp, and they had to change doors around. Trying to make our house wheelchair ready because
Right.
actually they wouldn't release us from the hospital until our house was wheelchair
Mhm.
ready.
Mhm.
Again, things you don't know. I had no idea about any of this. And we just kept fighting it. We kept doing everything we could. And honestly, it was 11 weeks from the time that it was diagnosed to where he passed away. It was 11 weeks. And it's uh, part of me, I don't know if I could have done years. I know that sounds crazy. Oh, but you have your
No,
husband. But I have a young family.
I know. I know. I know people who have done years, as I'm sure you do, and I
Mhm.
feel like God gives us exactly what's custom made for us to
Exactly.
glorify him and to get us
Mhm.
closer to him. And you had mentioned how, and I know you wrote a book on faith, and we're going to get to that, but the thing that just resonated with me when you had these babies and someone said to you, how could God take their father when you have these babies? And what you said was, it just gives me goosebumps. Tell everyone what you said about
Yeah,
those
well,
babies.
those babies were a surprise. There's a little gap between my daughter and the twins, and the fact that they were twins. And yeah, he said, "Why would God give you those babies?" Because they were only 16 months when he passed away. And if it wasn't for those twins, those twins saved me because for anybody who's had twins, you have to have a schedule. You have to get out of bed. You have to feed them. You have to take care of them. My olders and youngers, my older kids, they not rightfully so, but they could have taken care of themselves.
Yeah,
They were,
right.
11, 9, and 7. They
You
could,
could have
my
gone into that pit
yes,
and they
but
would
with
have
those
figured out a way.
and they would have figured out a way. But those twins, they made it so I could never be in that pit.
That's
And
amazing.
you see God's hand in the timing. Again, the timing, that huge gap. I thought I was done with my first three. Oh, the youngest was in kindergarten. I'm done. And then, I end up with twins. I mean, even twins is harder than just one. I
Right,
mean,
right.
those twins, they kept me on my toes. They still do.
It's amazing. It's an
They
incredible
still.
story. Now, tell us about the book that you wrote. And you said, "Oh, I have to rewrite it." Well, tell us
I do
about this
have to rewrite it.
book that you were compelled to write to help others.
Well, I if you know Patty pre my husband dying and Patty now, they are two different people. Um, and the only change is through God. I mean, that was the only way I could get through this. I was smart enough to know that I wasn't smart enough to do it without his help, if that makes
No,
sense.
totally
There,
does.
there was no pride in me going, oh, I can do this. No, I was literally like, I am at my wits' end. And so I wanted to document and to just stand as a witness that, hey, if someone who, I mean, like, I didn't even pay the bills. I didn't even know what bills we had. Like, I remember bringing like our bills and our little filing thing to the hospital going, okay, what do we do? I mean, that's how just and, and an interesting story about that is um, we ended up moving to Utah to be closer. All his family is like within 10 minutes of each other. And so I needed help. So I ended up moving to Utah. And I remember sitting to sign the papers on buying that house all by myself and being like, wow, I've come a long ways from that person who didn't even know how to pay the bills or what bills we had to buying a home. And so that's why I wrote the book, because I just feel like, trust me, I know me. And this person you see, it isn't possible but without God. And so that's why I wanted to write the book. Is just like, look, trust me, if I can do it legit, anybody with God can do it.
That's
That's why I
amazing.
wrote it.
I love it. Tell us the title.
Oh, well, and again, this is why I need to redo it all.
That's okay.
I need to, it's wherefore did didst thou doubt? So it comes from the scripture in
Right.
Matthew, where remember where he's walking out of the water, and Peter comes to walk, and he starts to fall, and he reaches out his hands, and he's like, where did with me, nothing's impossible,
That's right.
and it's like, why did you doubt? I just, here I am. I can help you. And I know he'll help anybody. I mean, I something positive to come out of this.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I had to get the story because I just think the story is what a witness you are for trusting in
oh,
God to, no one would, if, God, I always say to the kids, look, God already knows, he knows the hour that you will pass on and be with him. And
mhm,
no matter what we do, it's going to happen.
yeah.
So he's always preparing us. And I've had it so many times for the next big thing in our life. Like you look back and you go, oh my gosh, my daughter got pregnant out of wedlock. I was reading a book that prepared me as a
Mhm,
mom how to handle that news.
yeah.
Unbelievable. If I had been just my regular self, it would have been a disaster. I probably would have ruined our relationship. But
Yeah.
because God prepared me, and I remember reading about this mom who was given the information, and I said, wow, I wish I could be a mom like that. And God
Mm.
goes, well, guess what? Tomorrow you've got an opportunity. I mean,
Well, and we don't want to. I don't want people to be like, "Oh, I don't want to buy this book because I don't
no,
want
no,
to."
no, no. I know it's all
I
it
know.
is just you can get through. Look, what you went through is incredible. But
Oh, thank you.
when you realize how God was with you every
Mhm.
step of the way, it's just like, that's just life. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be horrible. And we heard
Mhm.
stories that in the pink luncheon, I mean, one of the oncologists gets cancer.
Yeah.
Talk about
Yeah.
someone who can relate to other people. She
Yeah.
now has it.
Yeah.
And what a witness she can now be for others in the struggle. And that canopy, that amazing place
Oh,
out in the woodlands that helps people who have just been given this news. I mean, it was just the whole event was a delight, and it's
yeah.
special people like you who aren't afraid to share your story to help others who are going to get that news, and your
Yeah.
story was just very unique and beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I know Canopy, you got to tour it, right?
Yes, I did.
You toured
I did.
Canopy. Canopy, I just, even yesterday, I texted a friend who a good friend of hers, they're going through cancer and they live in the Houston area. And I said, have you heard about Canopy? And she doesn't live in the woodlands. And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Right,
You don't
right.
have to live in the woodlands. You don't have to be a Memorial, Hermann patient. And I text her the information. I'm like, here, this is a resource for families, for anybody going through cancer. I'm like, they don't accept any money, nothing. It's just a support for those with the diagnosis and going through it. And I love Canopy so much.
On the tour, you go into this beautiful gourmet kitchen where they give you a amazing cup of coffee. And then there's an exercise room. And then the other rooms and I know one of them was a doctor's office. They transformed it into this comfy living room with beautiful chairs to just sit, relax with your family, go through maybe if there's the therapist there to help you
Yep.
through this. And then the other room, if you're going to be getting chemotherapy and losing your hair, there's a beautiful chair. They can help you through the process, all kinds of scarves and everything you need to make it more of not something that's so sad, but something, come on, we're going to do this together. I mean, and it's all privately funded. And that's what part of In the
Hmm.
Pink Luncheon, the funds went to Canopy. And it was just so beautiful that you, having had your experience, were able to share and your incredible skills. What do you do for a living?
Well, now I have 8 children total.
So
Like I
you're a
said,
super mom.
I only wanted 3 and I fell ass backwards into 8. I don't know how. I don't know how. And so yeah, the twins now, they're going to be 17,
Wow.
and then I have a baby that's, well, she's not a baby, but she's 12. She's our youngest, and that's where I said it's amazing. The 5 kids weeded out jerks. I honestly thought I would never marry again. I
Yeah.
really,
Yep.
really, really did. I
Yep.
thought I would never marry again. I was like, I have money. I have the love of my life. Nobody can replace him. I don't need to marry. I don't need to get married. And the loneliness is kind of what shocked me the most. Is not having someone, just a partner like that.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
that was shocking. And I just, finally it gets to a point where you're like, okay, fine, I guess I'll date. But let me tell you, the 5 kids weeded out jerks like nobody's business.
So good. They're blessings, boy. Are they not
Oh,
blessings?
they were. I mean, the twins were 3. I'm like, yeah, you get these twin 3-year-olds, and they don't go away every other weekend. They aren't. They're here all the time.
Hysterical.
And and so my husband that I'm now married to, Steve, um, him and his first wife, they could never have children. And he came from a big family and always wanted a big family. And they had adopted 2 kids. And he was just thrilled to
That's amazing.
have a big family. And then that's where the baby, we call her our little miracle baby, because she was a surprise for him, and she united the family. And so
That's
she's,
so beautiful. All right.
and
I'm thinking,
yeah.
Patty, the movie, Jennifer Aniston, you could be
Oh,
Jennifer
sure.
Aniston could
Yeah.
play you.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with you if there's any questions they have, or where we can get the book on Amazon?
Yeah. They can, so I started doing a podcast for a while, and that they can they can find that. So they can get to talk to me on Facebook. It's Perfectly Patty Talks. I
And
think
it's
that's how you find it.
P-A-T-T-I.
Patti. Yeah.
Perfectly Patty
And
Talks.
so you can find that on Facebook, and then they can always message me on there. And because yeah, I used to do these videos too until the pandemic and life got crazy and I had a whole bunch of stuff going on. But that's definitely that's how. But my book is under Patty Epperson, Epperson.
Perfect.
Um, that's my
Perfect.
maiden name. But it's great. The best thing about that book is for my kids, especially for the twins.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like a journal for
Yep.
them
Yep.
to have
That's
to,
amazing.
yeah. So
That's
so
excellent.
anyways.
Patty, I'm glad you were able to, who knows, maybe now you can share your story with a larger audience. I mean, I could see you traveling around and sharing that story because
Oh, I
I
would
tell
love to.
our guest, Ellen Hildebrand, the author, she was amazing. Her story was incredible.
Yes.
But your story it was just so shocking what had happened in your life and how you knew exactly how everything was kind of, you look back and thought, yep, I see it, I see it, and I see it.
Mhm.
And it just gives people hope. It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
So thank you for spending some time with us, Patty. I really loved hearing your story.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And you were great. I love your
Thank you.
energy. You're
Thank
fabulous.
you. Yours as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.